Hello there guys, what is going on? Daniel Charles back here again for another podcast, another show. It is a special show today. We have got a brilliant guest on to speak about Chelsea. Although we are at kind of a calm period, can you believe it, over the past year in terms of Chelsea history, but this is going to be exciting, a good conversation today. Before we do get into that conversation and welcome the guest to the show, make sure to hit that subscribe button, make sure to hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of the uploads on the channel. And if you're listening on the podcast feed, thank you so much for tuning in. Son of Chelsea is a part of the 90 Min podcast network. But let's introduce the guest. This is someone I've wanted to have on the channel for a number of years. I think a brilliant reporter, someone whose work I do reference a lot on my show, and that is Liam Twomey of The Athletic. Liam, how you doing, mate? Great to finally have you on the Son of Chelsea podcast.
Yeah, it's good to be here. I'm sorry it's taken us so long to make this happen. I'm pretty sure it's been my fault. I've been quite hard to pin down. But yeah, doing well generally. Very disconcerted by the fact that we've gone several days now without Chelsea either playing a match or signing a multi-million-pound footballer. But I'm sure that will change.
Yeah, Chelsea do not allow you, and you probably know this more than anyone else, Chelsea do not allow you to relax for that long. So you've got to savour these moments, Liam. Like these are precious times where Chelsea aren't doing anything mad. But let's talk about transfer deadline day. I was on a live stream last night, and I was sort of looking at the targets, and at the moment I'm more confident that Malo Gusto from Lyon is the one that I can see getting done, because it seems like that's the one with, I mean, maybe you could tell me differently, feels like the least complications. Chelsea aren't going to have to spend over 100 million to get, there's no like massive release clause here, but there is also that midfielder thing that I think a lot of us have been crying out for years and years at this point. It feels like most of the time I've been doing this channel, I've wanted to see Chelsea sign a central midfielder. Let's start with Enzo Fernandez. I mean, I know there was some hope earlier in the week that things have been rekindled, but Benfica's public stance isn't changing. And I mean, it's such a massive commitment for Chelsea's owners to say, here you go, here's over 100 million for a player who, being fair, all the hype around, has only had 6 months, is it, of European football?
Yeah, I mean, my feeling on the Enzo deal hasn't really changed in the last few weeks since talks initially broke down. Is that I can't see any way that Chelsea agreed to pay the buyout clause. I'd be stunned, because it has to be accounted for all at once, and that just doesn't fit with everything else that Chelsea have been doing with the long contracts, the amortization. It doesn't fit with the strategy. I'm not even sure if it's mathematically possible for them to stay FFP compliant doing a deal like that. So the only option you could imagine that Benfica might accept is if Chelsea pay over the clause in instalments. But even then, there appeared to be disagreements over what that structure should look like. And fundamentally, Benfica do not need to sell. This is why they're asking this much for Enzo, because they signed him for a pittance 6 months ago from South America. He's had an amazing ride to international prominence with everything that he's done for them in the Champions League group stage and then for Argentina at the World Cup. And they've got real things to play for in the second half of the season. They can win the Portuguese league. They're top at the moment. And they're in the Champions League round of 16. They topped a group that had Juventus and PSG in it. So they know that they're a good team this season. And they've got a very winnable round of 16 tie. I think it's against Genk. It's not against a European heavyweight anyway. Yeah. So if you're looking at this from Benfica's point of view, you're thinking, we've banked a ton of money from Liverpool over the last 2 years for Diaz and Nunes. We don't need this. We don't need the distraction of it. We don't need to remodel our midfield mid-season. And if Enzo is as good as people believe that he is, he's going to be pretty hard for them to replace. And Benfica are used to replacing players and refreshing their team, but I don't think they want to do it mid-season. And that's why this is a really difficult negotiation for Chelsea. And when you add on top of that the public anger that we saw earlier this month from Holger Schmidt and other people at Benfica, some of that will be posturing, but some of that will be an added complication to all of this.
When he came out and said that earlier, it reminded me a little bit of last year when Tuchel came out and very publicly talked about the Christensen contract situation, and colleague and mutual friend, I think, Adam Newson, I remember us talking about it at the time, being like, rarely did Tuchel was such a politically savvy Chelsea manager in those situations that he ain't going to talk so publicly and strongly about a contract negotiation if there isn't some kind of at least confidence that maybe is the feeling behind the scenes. When you see a coach, particularly one of Tuchel's stature, and in the case of Benfica, says that so publicly with all these negotiations going on, and if you're doing that, you're potentially jeopardizing over 100 million for a club. And even though there's that side which is we don't want to sell in January, but it also is the case of, is this the height of Enzo Fernandez's value as a player? Does he get injured? Does his form completely tail off? But I agree. I find it very unlikely. I mean, the other midfield option is also a thing that's going to, probably cost Chelsea a high bargain, because Brighton know that Chelsea can pay them a lot of money, is Moises Caicedo. I think the Athletic were reporting last week around 55 million bid. I was speaking to a Brighton fan yesterday who kind of thinks 100 million or nothing, effectively. I mean, this is another one where Chelsea are kind of in a bad place negotiation-wise, right? I mean, they're going to have to spend over the odds for this player.
Certainly in this window. I think there's... The direction of travel seems to be towards Caicedo leaving Brighton in the summer, one way or another. He's just changed his agents. There does seem to be a conscious move towards getting him out of Brighton, more in the next window than this one. But in this one, Brighton hold all the cards. He's under contract. Again, they don't need money. They've got plenty of Chelsea money sitting in the bank accounts already. And that the price they got for Marc Cucurella is looking very, very good right now.
We're holding out for the Levi Colwill tax, Liam. That's what we're holding out for at this point.
Yeah, what a badly timed injury for him, by the way. He was doing so well. But yeah, I think they're just in a really strong position. Brighton, well-run clubs usually put themselves in strong positions like this, where their players don't have easy release clauses, and they don't let contracts run down. They don't make silly mistakes. If you want the players, you're going to have to pay top dollar. And I don't know what price it is that Brighton would consider selling Caicedo. There have been suggestions in the last couple of days that they are looking at midfield targets. I know there was Haidara at Leipzig that they were looking at. But that could just as easily be with a view to getting a replacement in the door 6 months before they sell Caicedo, because that's another thing good clubs do, is they already have the replacement in place before they sell the player that everyone wants. So Caicedo, I think, Chelsea's interest is real. They really like him. Obviously, they've got a lot of Brighton brains in the recruitment brain trust right now. So it's no surprise that Caicedo's name has figured pretty prominently. But it's just not one that I don't know. I don't see the numbers making sense in this window, to be honest.
Do you think the Gusto one is, it kind of would go under the radar, and I don't think it would be a massive fee, but do you think it actually be one of the biggest pieces of business or trickiest to do, to convince a player to come and, at the risk of being Reece James' understudy, because it's a bit like the Harry Kane situation, right? The Spurs have been dealing with for years at this point of, Reece's injury problems are concerning. They really are, like, if they persist. But to get someone to back up to Reece that you go, there could be a chance that you're not playing most weeks if Reece is fit and firing. That in itself is a tricky challenge for any club, I think, to navigate. It's easy for me to sit here and go get a right back, but to get a player who actually wants to come to the club and accept to potentially be in the role of kind of a backup goalkeeper and kind of an outfield role is difficult.
Yeah, it's a very difficult sell. And I have to put the disclaimer that Gusto is probably the one of all of the widely reported Chelsea targets. It's the one that we have the least clear handle on what's going on right now. That will probably change in the next couple of days. But right now, we're not entirely sure where that negotiation stands. We know Chelsea like him. I would say in more general terms, it's maybe easier to make that pitch to a slightly younger player at the kind of club that Gusto is at, sort of mid-tier European club, because you are at least offering them a bigger stage. They will get an opportunity to play. You'll be offering them a significant pay rise, obviously. But I think with more experienced options, take Denzel Dumfries, for example. One of the, widely regarded as one of the best, one of the most accomplished right wing backs in Europe right now, I'd say, who's gettable or near gettable. I would be very surprised if Chelsea could persuade him to come in and be Reece James' alternative / understudy, because it's just, players like that don't have to do that. They've got other options. They can play at a really high level and be a key piece for a good European team. So this is where the art of squad building comes in. These players are not always easy to find, but you need to find the right profile of player that is both happy to sit behind a top tier talent, a core talent in your squad, but also good enough to make a good to do a passable enough impression of that player, or give you enough when they do play that you don't seriously miss them. And you see even well-run top clubs don't get it right all the time, because it's really difficult to find those players, and to a certain extent you're projecting based on personality as well as talent. How happy are they going to be sitting on the bench? Do they have the mindset where they're just going to stay ready no matter what, or are they going to lose focus, lose confidence? So it's really difficult. When you get someone like, when you get a Chicharito and you hit a home run on like an impact player, you really feel it, and it can really benefit a squad. But they're not always happy. Even players like Chicharito aren't happy doing that forever. So I find the art of squad building very fascinating, and I think it's very complicated.